So I'm really excited to introduce you to Sarah and Stacey from Common Seas. We will kind of go around the room and do a little bit of an intro, but I'm Lindsay from World Ocean Day for Schools. We have been working with the amazing team at Common Seas for a few years now, and we thought it would be a great opportunity to learn more about what they do as an organization, but specifically in the realm of education. And we are very, very lucky to have two education experts with us. So Sarah, Stacey, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm wondering whether you can introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Sure, shall I go first? Hi
Sure.
everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm the Head of Education at Common Seas. I've been working here for almost 5 years now, and as Lindsay mentioned, working closely with World Ocean Day for Schools for much of that time, which is fantastic. Prior to joining Common Seas, I was a primary school teacher for a number of years, and I also worked in the environmental education sector for more than a decade now. So lots of experience in this space, and very excited to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah. So I'm a newbie at Common Seas compared to Sarah. I started about just coming up a year ago, and my background is actually intersectional. It's in climate justice and law, as well as education and policy. And I've always been a climate activist in my space. I'm based in Barbados. I also was a teacher for I won't say how many years, so I don't age myself. But I just think this is a really exciting space to be in, and getting students involved and seeing the shift in education to including environmental and sustainability and consciousness. So yeah.
Amazing. So I guess we'll start by learning a little bit more about Common Seas. Can you share a little bit of background about who Common Seas are, what you do, your mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I'm sure you're aware, we find plastic pretty much everywhere we look. So from the furthest shores to deep inside our bodies. So plastic has actually become a human health issue as well as a social and environmental issue. And at Common Seas, our vision is healthy seas and also a healthy future free from plastic. So to achieve this, we're creating partnerships to design and deliver resources and solutions that help to stop the flow of plastic pollution. Um, these partnerships include lots of different people and groups. So we collaborate with governments and leading organisations, particularly in small and developing states and coastal countries, to identify and accelerate the implementation of the most effective policies that significantly reduce plastic waste and pollution. Alongside this, we're also conducting health research into the mechanisms through which plastic harms us, something that we still know quite little about. And of course, we're building a global community of schools and ocean literate young people through our education programme, ensuring that our future citizens and leaders are really empowered to help tackle this problem as well.
Wow. I think what's really interesting about Common Seas is that you're working in those different areas, because quite often you get an organization who just work in policy or just work in education. And I think it really shows in the work that you do that you're across all those things. So kind of everything seems to influence everything else. It's super interesting. Tell me more about the role of education at Common Seas. How, like, what role does it play? Why is it so important?
Well, it's a crucial importance, right? I mean, we've stated our mission is to stop the flow of plastic pollution because we want to protect our ocean and our health and our future. And the role education plays is that it kind of zeroes in on the fact that we need to educate and empower future generations to continue to make change. And in order to tap into that empowerment, you need to understand the role that you play and know that every little bit actually makes a difference. And they are solutions that are available to you as a young person. So that's where our education program comes in. We want every young person to have the knowledge and the skills, as well as the courage, to bring that courage out in them to make sure that they can be part of a better future.
Amazing. So you guys have got lots of different educational programs and resources that reach lots of different places around the world and different age groups. I'm really curious because it's something that we have to think about every year at World Ocean Day for Schools, like how you go about designing those resources and how do you make sure that they're impactful and accessible for different schools around the world.
Yeah, great question. And yes, we have absolutely loads of resources available, and it's really important to us to make sure that they are those things. So, as I mentioned before, we really prioritize partnerships and working with partners, including educators, particularly young people and children, subject associations, and other industry experts. We bring those people together when we're trying to create resources so that we make sure that they're really strong in terms of the subject knowledge that they're bringing, but they're also what teachers and what young people want and need in the classroom. So we have fully resourced lesson packages on ocean literacy and marine plastics. These stem from early years resources, which we are just about to launch, right the way through to age 16. Um, And we also have a school award called Plastic Clever Schools. And this is really about providing everything that teachers and students need to be able to reduce plastic waste in their schools, with the students at the heart of that action. All of our resources are available for free. We think that's really important, and to any school in the world. And they're aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and Ocean Literacy for All framework, so that we can ensure they're relevant and easily adaptable as well to teachers wherever they are.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to just follow up on what Sarah was saying there, because we also have locally launched resources as
Yeah.
well. And these are more closely aligned to the local reality of young people that we're trying to reach. So we have translations or resources are available in English, Greek, French, and Dutch. And then we have some specific Caribbean resources, which we adapted so the visuals and the references would resonate more with Caribbean students and teachers. And an example of this is that we've included the Caribbean Sea in the map, which shows the 5 gyres, which are these are the circular currents caused by wind patterns and the Earth's rotation. So we thought it was really important that students could look and locate where the Caribbean is in relation to some of these areas. And we also have a focus on the role of education in the National Action Plan to End Plastic Pollution in Barbados. And this is a plan that's an example of one of the partnerships that Sarah would have mentioned. It was developed in partnership with the government of Barbados, and we also showcase inspirational regional initiatives to spark curiosity and action. So yeah, we think that this idea of honing in on this local context, it makes the goal of eliminating plastic pollution a lot more relatable, and we think this fosters a greater sense of motivation.
Yeah, and I love that. And it makes me think about what we're doing this year with World Ocean Day for Schools with our card game that
Yes.
you guys have been
Yeah.
involved with, which is kind of helping ocean literacy feel relevant, even if you're not lucky enough to live by the ocean, so wherever that blue space is. So yeah, and I think that's such a key part of making things land for educators and for kids. I'm curious, what has surprised you most about what works or maybe doesn't work when it comes to teaching people about the ocean?
Well, I think it's been a really pleasant surprise for me that there's been a huge amount of interest with this initial introduction to knowledge about the ocean. So you think at first, well, maybe people might be a little intimidated, but it's almost as if there's this instinctual urge to know more, and the audience becomes more and more engaged the more we talk, and then this is a huge. There's a level of intellectual curiosity and real hunger to learn more about the ocean, and that surprised me in a good way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think my response is fairly similar. So for me, it's really the ability to surprise your audience, whether that's teachers or students, with how incredible the ocean is. And I think it doesn't matter how much you think you know about the ocean, there is just always something more to learn and new ways to be amazed. In terms of what's sort of maybe a bit more difficult and challenging to overcome, it's that sense that only those physically close to the ocean are connected to it, which of course isn't the case. But we see a lot and we hear a lot with schools that perhaps aren't on the coast thinking perhaps something isn't for them. And it's actually been really great working with World Ocean Day for Schools and seeing the way that you have kind of worked to change that mindset, particularly with a focus on blue spaces rather than just that concentration on the ocean, and helping to bring that feeling of being connected closer to home for so many.
I love that. I'd love to know one project, maybe both of you can answer this, one project that you're especially proud of from the last year or so that you've done at Common Seas.
I think a standout moment for us was last November when we hosted our first International Day of Action, which brought together schools around the world with the shared mission to tackle plastic pollution and to also learn more about the ocean and come together to care for it. So we were, expecting or hoping for a fairly small uptake, but we had around 430 schools from 27 countries sign up to join the event, and more than 600 examples of youth-led action in schools tackling plastic pollution and connecting with local blue spaces. And it was just such an exciting day. The day had assemblies led by youth advocates for the ocean. It had exciting experts from around the world, including the incredible Inka Creswell, marine biologist and filmmaker who I know has been involved in World Ocean Day before. And also a highlight of that event were the beacon schools. So we had schools, we had them in different parts of the world, UK, Greece and Barbados. And during the day, they found time and made space to connect with each other, to share what they've been doing as part of their day of action, and sort of pass the baton on to the next school to take on that challenge and be really motivated and inspired by each other. It was a really, really lovely day, and excited to do it again.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that was really fantastic. And it was great to see. I remember a specific moment when the Barbados school, which was a secondary school, connected with the primary school in the UK. And I found the older students were so inspired by the younger students, by their enthusiasm and what they were going to do. So, and this kind of connection that we're bringing is, I think, absolutely part and parcel of tackling plastic pollution. So the next International Day of Action is happening in October. Anywhere, I mean, I'm super excited already to see how it's going
Nice.
to go.
Mark your calendars. We'll make sure we share with everyone when that's going to happen. One of the things I think is that you do really well at Common Seas, but I imagine it's quite a challenge, is that because you focus on plastic pollution at a systems level, that's not the simplest thing necessarily to bring into a classroom setting. So I'm curious how you approach bringing that kind of complexity into schools and education.
Yeah, well, I think a good example of that is the National Action Plan that was piloted in Barbados that we mentioned, right? I mean, it's policy change at a national level, at government level, but because it has education as a main pillar of implementation, we kind of could see how it could match to the Plastic Clever journey of becoming a Plastic Clever school. Because as part of the Plastic Clever schools approach, which is the Inspire and Investigate Act, the learners have to create a similar plan to roll out in their school setting. Obviously, not as complex, but it has the same basic elements of it. And students take the lead. So the students are taking the lead, and to be truly successful as a whole of school approach to committing to reducing plastic waste. And as the children develop the skills and the knowledge, we see that this kind of project-based experiential learning at a school level, it kind of mirrors a complexity of the idea of a systems change. And then that helps the children to get kind of a more concrete understanding of a national policy, which may seem quite abstract, but you and yourself, you're doing your bit to carry it out, and that actually makes it a lot more concrete for them.
Yeah, I love that idea, actually. I hadn't thought of it that way, of kind of, you're working within your own ecosystem, right? And you've kind of made that change. I know with schools that we've worked with, having conversation with the kids who've like been really proactive and made something change in their school is so impactful for them to know that they got together and they made this decision, and now because of that XYZ has happened. I think it's probably like the most, it's more work to make it happen, but you guys have built that framework to make it easy, and I think it's definitely the most impactful. How do you teach about plastic pollution without it being overwhelming? Because I feel like we've all seen the stuff on the news or the videos on YouTube or whatever it is of like these beaches covered in plastic, and so it could feel very overwhelming and a bit disempowering. How do you shift that narrative when you're teaching about it?
It's such a good question, and I know as an adult I sometimes face that challenge myself of not becoming overwhelmed by everything that we're facing. But I think we're really fortunate that for our Plastic Clever Schools Award, we collaborate with Kids Against Plastic. That was a charity founded by Amy and Ella Meek when they were just 10 and 12 years old. And when they founded it, they came up with this idea of being plastic clever, hence Plastic Clever Schools. And what that means is, it recognizes that, not necessarily all plastic is bad. And even if it is, sometimes it's unavoidable. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't change what we can. So it makes something that can be a real struggle, trying to be plastic free for so many of us can be unattainable because it's out of our control, especially for kids in schools. And so that notion of being plastic clever, it makes something very difficult actually a really achievable task. So it becomes really rewarding, and children can really see the impact that they're making. And there are so many challenges facing our world today and many of them do really feel out of reach, and that can be quite stressful for us as adults, but especially for children. And plastic, whilst it's one of our biggest crises, is also really tangible. So we can all see the plastic that we use every day. We can all see the impact that has. But we can also very clearly see the impact that we can have in a really positive way through the changes that we make in our own behaviours and the changes that we can take collectively as a school, but also as part of this network. So, with 1,300 schools all taking action on plastic, suddenly, that's huge impact. And I think that's how we approach it is, first of all, making it achievable in the sense that we're being plastic clever and we're tackling the things that we can to have as strong an impact as we can, but also bringing this network together to show that we're not doing it alone. There's lots of people working together, and together we can really do something great.
Yeah, and I'll add to that and just say that, also crucial to that idea of coming together and doing something tangible is we try to keep it fun. I mean,
Absolutely.
we really want children to have fun, and that, when we do that, we saw an example of that. We had a summer camp in Barbados last year, and we included elements of fun, but also advocacy, to show children that they have a voice and they have a message that they can deliver that's going to be effective. And this was really empowering. And children were so happy to take the lead. They had so much fun as well, knowing that they could take this tangible action and knowing that in this, they're supported by peers because they're all together, but also the adults present. So it was a kind of a collective intergenerational sense of community. And this was so empowering. And I think this helps to prevent the crisis from becoming too overwhelming.
And I think that leads me perfectly onto my next question, which is, sometimes these seemingly small projects that start in schools then evolve and become incredible movements. So I'm wondering if you've seen any examples where youth engagement has actually sparked real world action or policy change.
Oh yeah. I mean, one of the most significant ones on an international level is the organization called Pacific Island Students Fighting for Climate Change. They started as a group of young law students in university, and they successfully campaigned to seek an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice, like the highest court of the world for justice. And that this decision was about climate change and human rights. And it was a 5-year journey. It wasn't easy for them, but they decided to bring together a campaign to persuade leaders from Pacific Islands, so the Pacific Islands Forum, to tackle the issue of climate change and see it as intrinsically linked to human rights. Because in the Pacific, it's an existential crisis. You have a rising sea levels that will completely take over islands, and places will become uninhabitable, right? But this was initially very much a youth-led grassroots community initiative. And they had this incredible, vibrant campaign. And I mean, and the UN General Assembly actually in 2023 adopted the resolution and issued the edict that the ICJ should examine the case. So, there were written submissions, and there were some incredible videos, if you look online, of the oral submissions of these students and young people telling the stories of their communities. And now, the case is in deliberations in the highest court in the world. So that's amazing.
I absolutely love that. It's such a good example of what young people can accomplish. But I think also it's important to really recognize that while some accomplishments are huge and, history changing, others may be much smaller, but, any sort of change that children can affect is, such a win and such, an empowering experience. And I think it's really important to recognize those small changes that children are able to bring about as well. And I think, Stacey, it's something that we see all the time with the schools taking part in our program. We've had over 1,700 pieces of evidence submitted, which are all student-led actions to affect long-term change on plastic reduction in their school. And I think that's really exciting. And hopefully the young people taking part and seeing those small changes, they'll be the ones that go on to be our future leaders, our innovators, our active citizens, the ones affecting those big changes in the future. So it's a really exciting starting point.
Yeah, and it feels like it. I think sometimes we probably don't even know the impact of those little interventions in school. It feels like sometimes it's years later when you talk. I mean, I know with World Ocean Day for Schools, we're talking to kind of youth ocean activists all the time, and you ask them where it started, and sometimes it is like a project they did in their eco school at eco club at school, or it's a beach clean that they went to. And so yeah, it's almost like you're planting lots of seeds that you probably don't even know the impact that you've had already with all the kids that have engaged in your work. So wrapping up, I'm curious what's next for Common Seas. We've obviously got World Ocean Day coming up, but what else is happening? What else is on your radar this year?
It's an exciting year, I think. Obviously, World Ocean Day is a calendar highlight. But we've also, as I mentioned earlier, we've just launched some brand new resources for early years, which is, a great addition to our materials. We know that a lot of primary schools have been really wanting to have these in particular so that they have that sort of resource available across the ages. So we're very excited to get those into schools and support teachers to start using them. So please, if you want to give them a go, do get in touch. And then we're also preparing to launch Plastic Clever Schools in a few new countries. So we're currently just launched in Belgium with partners in River Cleanup. And also with River Cleanup, we are preparing to adjust our resources into a global template that is more easily adapted around the world, can be accessed anywhere in the world, and we'll be piloting these in Indonesia later in the year as well. So hoping to bring in some new schools to our day of action when the time comes.
Yeah, that's the other thing we're really excited about. I mean, you've mentioned mark your calendar. I'll say it again, mark your calendar. October. We're not sure when. This is like a kind of save the date for the month.
Yeah.
But that's coming up. The next International Day of Action is coming up. I mean, I already have students who participated last year kind of reaching out through their teachers to ask when is it happening again here in Barbados.
That's
so
so
yeah,
cool.
and we've got some amazing Plastic Clever School action grants where schools can apply for up to £500 to help their school to reduce plastic waste and to put an action plan. So, I mean, if you sign up at plasticcoverschools.co.uk, you can stay up to date with all of the things we have planned. And then also, most importantly, you can access all our free resources there.
Amazing. I know that any educator that goes onto your website will be, yeah, feeling very, very happy that they did when they realized just how much is there and all the, the array of different opportunities and activities and resources. So we will make sure we put all the links in with this recording so we can send people. And also, I'm sure they can sign up to your email newsletter so that they hear when that International Day of Action is. The moment you have that date for October, we can share it with everyone. So thank you both so much for your time today. I'm really excited that you are popping up, I think, on our map in Indonesia, in Greece, and in Barbados as part of our Ocean Decade Challenge for schools. So make sure you scoot around the map and find Common Seeds in those 3 places. But yeah, thanks for your time and thanks for doing all the incredible work that you do.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to join you today. Thank you.
Yes, it was great. Thank you.